Welcome to Houston Sports Talk's first live Texans Postgame Show. I'm Robert Land alongside my co-host Sports Radio 610's Shaun Bijani. He's on my left, right, I'm not sure, but he's the guy that's not talking right now. Between the two of us, 45 years combined in sports journalism, 35 years covering Houston sports, 34-24 Chargers, the final score. You guys, I'm sure, know that by now. And Shaun, you're out at NRG. Any news from the Texans locker room? Any update on Derek Stingley, for example?
Stingley spoke after the game, so that's always a good sign. Typically when guys are hurt, like really hurt, they're not going to talk after the game. Stingley just said multiple times. He was asked 3 times by reporters about his left arm and his health, and he said he was fine. I think it was Lovie Smith who said in his post-game press conference that it was a bruise. Whatever it is, you could tell Stingley was in some pain after the first time he came out. The second time on the field, still grabbing that left arm. For a guy who was kind of side-eyed, Robert, for maybe being a little soft, at least maybe that was a little scuttle, I really appreciate. I love the toughness that I've seen from the rookie today.
Yeah, he's shown a lot in his first few games. He's getting there. It's going to take some time, though. We got to be patient with him. And reminder, we guys need you to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube. That's how you can support the show. Make sure to look for our midweek show with the latest Texans, Astros, Rockets, and Cougars conversation. But let's get to this one. We like to take you possession by possession. First Texans possession. Instead of the usual 3-and-out, Sean Davis Mills mixes it up with a third down interception. Titus Howard's man, Khalil Mack, causes Mills' arm to get hit on the throw. That leads to Jalen Petrie getting beat on a touchdown pass. I was prepared to praise Petrie, Sean. Next Gen Stats had him ranked number 4 overall among all safeties going into this game. So he was looking good. But let's go back to the interception. What did you see on that?
You know, I saw great makeup by Petrie. You know, he got beat on a good move on that play and was still able to get a hand in there and make it a contestable ball. So I like the fight. I like the grit on that play. You know, we haven't seen him in coverage in those types of situations all too much. What we've seen most from Petrie is him coming in and cleaning up some plays and maybe being a second guy in pass coverage to a corner or another safety. So, you know, maybe this is something that teams kind of look at going forward, that they see a little bit of a weakness here, or they can try to exploit or test, if you will, the young rookie, which I think is going to come. This is still a very young season. There's a lot of film to, you know, go through as teams are going to continue to scout this team, scout these rookies. The Texans and Petrie is a guy that I don't really worry about. To me, he's shown already that he belongs not just as a tackler, not just as a guy who can play in the box, but still, even today, after that touchdown, still a guy in coverage that I feel like we should all be pretty excited about going forward.
Let me go back to the interception because I don't know what you thought, but I put this on Davis Mills. You could see Khalil Mack right in his face. You could say, well, yeah, you're going to make a better block there, but, you know, we're talking about one of the better pass rushers in the NFL.
Yeah, and, you know, that play was kind of bang, bang. I initially just thought Mills, boy, airmailed Nico Collins, and he was throwing the ball exceptionally high most of the day today. And I had to go back and watch it. Maybe you can tell me if you watched it in the slow down version, if that hit actually contributed to the ball elevating and going out of reach of Collins, which was also behind him for the interception. So I'm not exactly sure. I just know it was a problem for Mills all day today. But I tell you what, just as soon as you thought the guy was, you know, going to curl up in a corner and, you know, cry and call mom, he comes out with the big plays in the second half.
Yeah, you know, we'll get to that, but yeah, I don't know if I want to say anything yet. But Texans' next possession, the team that can't shoot straight, it's just like whatever can go wrong goes wrong. Kenyon Green called for a holding on a 30-yard Cooks reception. Rough day for Kenyon. We'll get to that in a little bit too. But then Mills sacked on 3rd and long, a coverage sack on defense. Blake Cashman drops an interception, hits him right in the chest. But at least they force a 3-and-out. Texans drive into field goal range. But again, they fire the gun directly into their toe, another self-inflicted wound. Tunsil called for a false start on 3rd and 5, followed by a super lame, I don't know what you thought about that play call, Sean, shovel pass to Burkhead on 3rd and 10, which leads to Fairbairn missing a field goal, of course.
I don't like any play call to Rex Burkhead at this point in time, and I know he scored a touchdown on what I actually thought was a brilliant play call, and I'll explain why, because I know we'll get to that possession here in a little bit. But look, those 3rd and long situations, unfortunately, the Texans have been in a number of those today. Like, I guess, it's a pulse that maybe Pep Hamilton has, or maybe even Mills has at a certain point in time where he's like, look, I'm just not feeling it. I'm not able to get the ball down. This is a big situation. If we got space, go ahead and make this call and see if Rex can bust one. But again, I go back to what we talked about this week, on our Wednesday show and even last weekend's show. 9 plays in a 10-year career that have gone for 15 yards or more. Rex Burkhead will not give you the big play. It's not going to happen. So stop looking for it. Stop hoping. Stop wishing upon a star. It's not going to happen. So, yes, saying that alone, I did not like that.
You're 0-3-1. You're not going anywhere. We knew you weren't going anywhere. Rex Burkhead has never gone anywhere as far as big plays or a guy that you could go to. The only good news with Rex today, zero running carries, none. So Pierce got all the carries today. And, we're going to talk a lot about him because this was a breakout for him. But the Chargers follow this possession up with an easy drive down the field. One play in the drive, couldn't be more Texans. And let's get to it, Sean. There are 2 receivers right next to each other. I saw 4 Texans defenders in the area, but nobody is within 5 yards of the pass. This is an epitome of what was going wrong in the first half.
Yeah, they just could not. They struggled in coverage really all day long. And for some reason, they either completely did not game plan for Austin Eckler. They forgot he was on the field. They forgot the Chargers could play with 11 men also. I couldn't really figure out what was going on. And there were a number of plays and 2 really big important ones that I know we'll get to on the Chargers' final drive that really gashed them and hurt them. And the thing is, we're going to talk about them, Robert, and a lot of people are going to point to, 2, 3, maybe 4, maybe a handful of plays throughout this game that really hurt the Texans. I'll tell you, it was probably closer to about 10 or 12. And Nick Caserio talked about it back in August before a game was even played. He says, you know what? Every NFL game comes down to 10 or 12. Look, some do, some don't. Some are really just about 3, 4, 5 plays. The Texans made a lot of mistakes today. And Lovie Smith cannot be happy with his team defensively. The amount of big plays that they gave up in space where, as you mentioned, there was nobody around to make a play, to contest a ball. That just can't happen for a team that, is so lauded. Oh, well, we're not just a Tampa 2. We're a team, that can adjust. And, we've got a lot of things going on defensively. And we have guys that can make plays. You might have guys that can make plays, but if they're not in position to do so, it's going to be a long day. And today, unfortunately, it was.
3 and out. And tell me if you've heard this one before. Davis Mills misses his receiver by 5 yards on 3rd down. Then the Chargers walk down the field for a TD. As I told Shaun Bijani a few days ago, the Texans defense proved nothing these first 3 games because they played 3 below average quarterbacks. Their first real defensive test was a disaster against a real quarterback.
Yeah, Mike Williams made the Texans defense look like Swiss cheese in particular on their 4th offensive drive for the Chargers. Had that 50-yard catch and run to the Texans 20 that set up that 20-yard run for Austin Eckler, who scored that touchdown. That was a bad defensive possession for them, and it looked like, this bend but don't break mentality, was finally really coming close to breaking in a bad way. But I know we'll get to it. The defense, you have to give them credit today, Robert, were a big part of the reason why the Texans even sniffed a chance in the 4th quarter at a go-ahead score.
Are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay. Thought I lost you for a second.
No, I'm here.
Yeah. So before I totally slit my wrist with everything that was going on, Dameon Pierce finally breaks one. 75-yard touchdown run, and a huge game for him, Sean. What a game for Dameon Pierce. You look at the final numbers, 14 carries, 131 yards, 9.4 yards per carry. Nobody else, like I said, had a carry for the Texans in the entire game.
And they shouldn't have. Unfortunately, what did you say Dameon Pierce finished with? 13 carries? He had 9 of those in the first half. I'm not exactly sure why the Texans refuse to play Dameon Pierce in the most important moments of football games. He is literally maybe your best player that you know you can get the ball to when you need to get him the ball, because all you have to do is hand the ball off. He's the most important player not named Brandin Cooks on this entire offense. And it's just egregious, I think, the lack of just, I don't know, common sense. And maybe it's not even that. Maybe there's something a little bit deeper going on here, Robert, that this is a systematic progression, and they know darn well what they're doing. And I think we need to have a larger conversation about Dameon Pierce and his lack of usage going forward.
Yeah, it's like Groundhog's Day. I don't know what else to say about it. You hit the nail on the head. So the Chargers walk it back down the field again for a field goal, 24-7. Then the Texans drive it down the field, 4th and 1. Davis Mills sacked. James Lofton said it was on the coaching staff for not calling timeout. They should have seen Khalil Mack was unaccounted for. But Sean, we go back to scapegoat Burkhead or scapegoat Rex. I'm going to start calling him scapegoat Rex because he could have chipped Mack when he went into that pattern, and you could tell Mills had his eyes on only one guy, and it was scapegoat Rex coming out of the backfield. He was just waiting for him to get open, and of course, nothing went right on that.
Yeah, and where's Dameon Pierce? This is exactly what I'm talking about. It is the most important play for the Texans in the game to that point. And the guy that just broke off a 75-piece, last possession, where's he at? Where is he at? And it's so telegraphed. Like, you need 1 yard. Dameon Pierce could just be 50% and give you that 1 yard with the way that guy's run the football this season so far. And you're going to go with Rex Burkhead. This goes back to deception and a lack thereof. Today what I did see from the Texans offense, and I paid more attention to it early in this game of the first half in particular, we saw a little bit more pre-snap motion to shift the defensive line a little bit. That's important. I think we need to see more of that going forward. The Texans use motion the least amount than any offense in the entire NFL to this point in the season. They did it a little bit better today, but it becomes more about just pre-snap motion. It becomes about the personnel that you have on the field. And if you don't have your best player on the field, then what are you really trying to do at that point? Rex Burkhead is not going to do it. And you're going to roll Davis Mills out on a 4th and 1? Why?
And it's funny because he was really good rolling out to his right last year, but we haven't seen it a lot this year.
I don't care. It's
yeah.
4th and 1, and you have Dameon Pierce watching just like you and me with the best seat in the house, and he's not getting the football on that play, or at least the thought by the defense that he could be getting the football that play. He's on the sideline. That's ridiculous.
You could have brought in the backup, who's actually a pretty good runner, if you were going to do something like that, but you have to have Pierce on the field, and you could have had a double threat at the line of scrimmage. Who's going to get the ball? I mean, a lot of options. It just seems like Pep always picks the option that none of us understand. So before the half, the Chargers walk it down the field again for a field goal before halftime. And I guess now, Sean, maybe you want to move over to inning by inning breakdown of the Astros, because I think everybody was turning the channel about at that point. It's like, hey, what's going on with the Astros? Aren't they about to start?
Yeah, it was funny because that field goal drive by the Chargers before the half, there was a buzz going on still in the stadium from that 75-yard touchdown run. I mean, it was just juiced in here. I mean, people are pumped for Dameon Pierce, and then to not have him on the field on that 4th and 1, but it was still going on. And then never mind, it's just Justin Herbert carving up a Texans defense. Bam, 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 bam. Some way, somehow, the Texans, and this is why I believe they do have a lot of good pieces already in place. They believe they're that close every play. And maybe that's just being young and dumb. Maybe that's just, good veteran mentorship. I don't know what it is. But they were able to carry the defense and what they were able to do, holding the Chargers to a field goal on that drive, because they very well could have scored a touchdown with the way that they made the Texans defense look prior to that. And then they were able to utilize, like, just think, man, we're one snap away from busting another one with Pierce. Problem is you only used him 4 more times in the entire second half.
Let's go to the third quarter. The Texans D finally stops the Chargers to start the second half after just, walking it up and down the field most of the first half. But they got a dropped pass, thanks to a dropped pass by the Chargers. But their next drive goes nowhere, and that's because Tunsil gets a holding penalty, and then there's a delay of game. I mean, again, it's just, how can we screw ourselves again and again and again? So on defense, they stop the Chargers at midfield. So let's go to a Texans touchdown drive, thanks mostly to who else? Again, Dameon Pierce on the ground, catching passes, doing a great job blocking on a huge Jordan Akins catch to the 6. I mean, I don't feel like talking about scapegoat Rex getting the touchdown. I want to talk about Dameon Pierce, Sean, because at least he was doing things all game long. And I said he was going to be a Pro Bowler one day. And this game verifies it. When you let him have the ball more often and you throw the ball to him and you figure out ways to keep him in the game because he can do everything, you're going to have a Pro Bowl caliber running back.
Yeah, I really do think it's not too strong to say this. The guy can be special. I think the guy is special, to be quite honest with you. And it's unfortunate that he may it feels like he's going to waste a season of his career being underutilized this season. I think the Texans very well know what they have in Dameon Pierce, but they're protecting him to some degree. I asked Dameon Pierce flat out after the game today, how are you handling your usage through the first 4 weeks this season, being off of the field for the game's most important moments? And this guy was the most upbeat, jovial, positive, gave the most positive response that I couldn't have scripted it. I mean, this is a guy that buys, and you talk about buy-in from your young players, from anybody in the locker room. Dameon Pierce is completely bought in. I mean, it's no BS. He went directly to Rex Burkhead and said, there's a reason why this guy's here, and I'm fortunate to be able to learn from him. For a guy that knows how to be in big situations, be on big downs, see how he handles it, whether it be picking up a blitz or pass blocking or coming up with a big play. That's exactly what Dameon Pierce said, and you can check it out on my Twitter a little bit later on. I'll put it out there. I'll put the whole interview out there for you. But, I mean, it's really incredible. That Burkhead touchdown, though, I do want to make a point here. I really thought it was a very, very good call by the Texans, because we talked about Davis Mills' struggles going to his left on anything. The numbers are not good. He has Rex Burkhead offset to his right in a shotgun set, cross his face, and that little dump off to Burkhead wide open for that touchdown. I mean, he skipped into the end zone. The defense knows, hey, look out for Rex Burkhead when he's in the game. The Texans are probably going to look there, but they're probably not anticipating Mills going or doing anything to his left. I thought it was a really kind of a gutsy play call for Pep Mills in that particular situation, because I had 2 people come up to me during that play and say, where the hell is Dameon Pierce? Why are they taking this guy out? He is literally the reason the Texans are doing anything offensively. That's his touchdown. Fair, I guess, but in the instance of you're trying to put yourself in an advantageous situation, I thought a solid play call by Pep in that instance.
You called him Pep Mills, which is kind of a Freudian slip there. It seems like that's kind of what those two guys, we're melding those two guys together. And
makes sense.
The 2 of them together, it's just not working real well. And you also talked about Pierce getting underutilized. I think he just stays in a good mood because he's used to that. He was dealing with that for years at Florida as well. So, I mean, what else does he know? I mean,
that's fine, but he scored he scored a lot of touchdowns in his final year at Florida, and he only has 2 to date. The guy could maybe have 4 or 5 touchdowns to this point of the season if, in fact, the Texans would use him when we all think they should use him. He's your best back. He needs to be on the field a lot. And I'm not saying he's a bell cow or needs to be used as such, but in big moments when the game calls for it, you need to have your best guys on the field, and that hasn't been the case yet.
Well, I can't agree with you more. So the Texans defense scores or forces a Chargers punt, and we have a Davis Mills fourth quarter sighting. Woo! I nearly fell off my chair. A rare screen pass for the Texans that actually works near the goal line to scapegoat Rex, of course. And then a couple of great Davis Mills passes. He hits Nico Collins deep on the money, and then Brandin Cooks for a touchdown, Sean. So he did something in the fourth quarter.
Biggest play through the air all season long, that did not have a whole bunch of yak attached to it. Mills through the air to Nico Collins at that point was a huge play. Nico was pumped, and really just when you thought Nico might have started to really show displeasure for Davis Mills, as the 50 some odd thousand people that were here watching this game today did, the Boo Birds came out a number of times today for the Texans offensive lack of output in particular, but that play really ignited this crowd again. And it was good to see back-to-back plays for Mills, who really started to look like he was in a rhythm. They come up with a big third down conversion there to Rex Burkhead, the 58-yard play to Collins, and then you find Cooks, and it's like, man, where has this been all season? We haven't even seen this in chunks last year. Forget the juiced up numbers in the final 5 games for Davis Mills. This looks like a really cool offense right now. Now, can they finish it off? They found out what exactly I think they have to build off on. And it's Pep not overthinking stuff. They know what they have. You just got to figure out how to use it.
Okay, so they got the momentum. And then MJ Stewart causes a fumble on the kickoff from ex-Texan DeAndre Carter, who gives us a little gift there. And there's a massive hit. He's busy celebrating, though, when Jalen Reeves-Maybin recovers, which is a bad look. And then Kenyon Green whiffs on a block on offense. The defender strips Mills, but luckily they recover. So maybe the Texans finally getting things to go their way. But then Mills with another terrible throw on third down, high and behind O.J. Howard. Sean, that could have been a first down if he hit him in stride. And although they cut it to 3 with the field goal, that was another missed opportunity by Davis Mills in a fourth quarter again.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, too, because, Mills really made a good pass earlier in the game to O.J. Howard, which was broken up, and it was an excellent pass deflection by, I think it was a linebacker. Could have been the strong safety there for the Chargers. But another opportunity to get O.J. Howard involved, who has really run some good routes for this team, Robert. If they can figure something out offensively, O.J. Howard can be a monster for this Texans offense. I really believe that. I mean, the guy's a big body. He's strong through contact. He runs good routes. He just needs to get the ball into space, and Mills had an opportunity, missed there to Howard in that situation. They have to settle for a 40-yard field goal. There were so many game-changing moments, such big momentum swings in a very short sequence there leading up to that 40-yard field goal, where the Texans put themselves in great position to steal this one, to complete the largest comeback in franchise history, which has never been done with a 2 and a 0 in front of it. They never come from behind 20 points down, 21 points down. They had that opportunity today, and it's just those things. They get their first fourth quarter points. They get their first big chunks of big plays today, all in a span of just 2-3 possessions in the second half. They just couldn't close the door.
Yeah, I feel like that was the big play on offense, the O.J. Howard play. But the biggest drive of the game for the Texans defense and the biggest play is coming right up, because 4th and 1, Eckler gets wide open out of the backfield, Sean, wide open. Somebody blew an assignment on that play, or that might have been another game changer for them.
Yeah, somebody asked after the game, Jalen Petrie, somebody else, boy, and we didn't get a great answer either time on what happened on that 4th and 1 situation with Eckler that went for 21 yards, and then just 5 plays later for the touchdown on almost the same exact play. I did have a chance to go back while I'm waiting to go into the locker room and see what happened on the 4th and 1. And whoever that linebacker was to the side, I couldn't see a number because it was kind of fuzzy. But they were in a 3-point stance pre-snap. Well, generally, that linebacker to that side is going to be responsible for any back that comes out of the backfield. in the flat, okay? If that route continues up to the second level, then should be the safety, which was Jalen Petrie on that side. Well, Petrie was distracted with another route that took him to the second level with Steven Nelson. Nelson ended up taking him. Petrie's in no man's land. You have a linebacker in a three-point stance, get clogged up in the middle. Austin Eckler is wide open. And the Texans, unfortunately, were unable to make that adjustment on that same drive, got burned and gashed the very same way.
Yeah, wide open pass for Eckler into the end zone. He rumbles, and it's nail in the coffin touchdown. And, you watch both of those plays, and maybe that's just the young defensive guys, but these linebackers, if it's their responsibility, and typically it is on a running back, I mean, they're not rookies, the linebackers, except for Garrett Wallow. Unless it was a Garrett Wallow, I can't remember if he was on the field, but I don't recall him even being involved in that. So, I mean, you just wonder what's going on. Like, Grugier Hill looked fantastic last year. I don't know if you remember. He was playing great football. He was everywhere. He was making tackles. Yeah. He was doing everything. He has been invisible this year. Just flat out, you just don't notice him in the game. I mean, he had some tackles today, and he was doing some things, but none of them were signature moments for him. And he had a lot of signature moments last year.
That's really the thing. Grugier Hill hasn't had very many signature moments. I mean, he did make a really good stop undercutting a guy for a short gain up the middle of the field, which I think at the time put the Chargers in a third and long situation. Maybe it was a 3rd and 6 earlier today, and that was in the first half. But you're right. I mean, Grugier Hill, especially the latter part of last season, was making some really good plays, and he certainly caught my eye for a really easy to do for a team last year that had nobody to watch for, literally nobody to watch for, and couldn't care less about any one of these players. Grugier Hill certainly stood out along with Desmond King on this Texans defense last season. And that's what you need from your linebackers. But that's been the conversation really ahead of this game coming in with the Chargers, Robert, is the lack of play in stopping the run from the linebackers. The onus falls on them and really just the front seven defensively, not just on the linebackers. It becomes about, the 2 defensive tackles and the DNs. They're not doing their job. They're making a lot of mental errors, missing tackles, missing gap assignments, gap integrity. That's number one. You can go across the board. You can talk to a little league football coach. He'll tell you the number one way to stop the run is gap integrity. And the Texans have certainly not had that to this point in the season, but your linebackers should be your stars. Grugier Hill, I don't know how many NFL teams he would start for outside of the Houston Texans, but the guy's a damn good football player for the Texans. He needs to show up in bigger moments, certainly.
The Texans don't ever seem to fool anybody in their misdirection, or rarely do, and the other team always fools the Texans in misdirection plays. And there were so many times where you saw the Texans just overcommitting, and that's how it seems like, I don't know if you agree, Sean, but a lot of the run issues that the Texans have, they're over pursuing sometimes. The running back, cuts back and he's got wide open spaces. It's interesting. The Texans run defense stinks. The Chargers run offense stinks. So who won the battle of awful? The Texans did. 27 carries, 81 yards, less than 3 yards a carry. So great. That's fantastic. But the running back killed you. When it mattered the most, the running back killed you in the key situations because the linebackers, again, I'm going to assume it's the linebackers on this particular case, because it usually is when you're talking about running back and keeping an eye on them and making sure they don't get too far away. They just aren't doing their job. And you know what? I know this season doesn't matter. Let's lean into being bad. We can get the higher draft choices, all that sort of thing. But, if you're going to throw Rex Burkhead out there and you're going to say, well, we're trying to be respectable and we're trying to do the right thing and we're trying to do this and that, well, then go find a linebacker, because linebackers typically aren't expensive. If there's some backup linebacker that maybe could play the run just a little bit better than your guys, because I'm sure there are backups on other NFL rosters that are better than the Texans starters, because these guys are retreads. They are guys that were not really in high regard by the teams that the Texans got them from, from my understanding. And, outside of, waiting for a Garrett Wallow to come on or a Christian Harris, why not go grab somebody like that? I mean, you can typically get that with a later round pick, if you're talking about some backup on somebody's bench, hopefully there's somebody like that out there. I mean, because it gets embarrassing week after week to watch the same exact things kill you.
Yeah. Look, I'll just say this. I'm not going to kill the Texans linebackers alone, because it does come down to what the defensive line isn't doing. Run games, inside zone, outside zone, can only be successful if your offensive linemen are able to get to the second level. And they're able to get to the second level. And so if that's happening, it's very difficult for linebackers to continue their angle of pursuit and get to where they need to be, their landmark, when that's the situation. When you've got guards, tackles, fullbacks getting up to the second level and setting blocks so quickly to take those angles away from linebackers, it makes it really difficult. It sets up cutback lanes. It gives them the outside edge, because that means the offensive line has beat the defense to a particular spot. So if you've got a guy that can stick a foot in the ground and get upfield, like we know Dameon Pierce can, that makes it very difficult on the Houston Texans going forward. But I want to see a little bit more of a sample size for the Texans in terms of what this linebacker group can do, as Wallows just played a second game, 22% of the snaps last week. I don't know how many played today yet. I haven't seen those numbers. Christian Harris is coming off of IR, at least eligible to, if there's not a setback going into week 5. So hopefully he has a good week of practice and the Texans can start to utilize him. And maybe he's a guy that can, improve the Texans' run defense down the road. But you're going to have to see much more from Roy Lopez, who I saw some good things from today at times. You're going to have to get much more from the Texans' defensive ends as well. We saw a number of egregious plays over the first 3 weeks in terms of containing the outside, and none more than maybe last week, Robert, with Jerry Hughes looking like, a third week player, never mind a 13-year veteran who just got completely lost, turned around, didn't know where the football was, lost all kind of integrity in containing the outside when he's supposed to be squeezing and looking for that ball to commit beyond the line of scrimmage. It's just, as much as the offense wants to say, and Dameon Pierce had on this a couple of times today after the game, it's not about the offense making MEs, as he called it, mental errors. Well, I think it is for the defense. I think there is a lot of mental errors going on for the Texans defensively, or maybe, as Lovie Smith quite simply said outright this past week, just a lack of gap integrity in just not trusting the defense. If it's that simple, then I don't really worry about it, because a couple of 3 weeks in, you can fix a lot of that from film study and just practice. But you do, when the game is on the line, you have to trust the defense. And in a situation like Eckler's 21-yard run on a 4th and 1, and then the whatever it was for the touchdown on that same drive, that's when you need guys to believe and buy in and trust your defense the most. But I think we saw more of a mental mistake from a number of different players in that instance than anything else.
And I've mentioned him earlier this year, but Jonathan Grenard, I just was expecting more from him. This should have been a breakout season for him. I just don't feel like he's impacting much of anything on defense. And, You need him to beat somebody on the outside and get you an easy sack every now and then if he's not going to make any impact in the run game. And he obviously doesn't do that.
Yeah, I don't know where he was today. When you were looking for guys like last week, offensively for me, Nico Collins had 4 catches last week. I didn't see one of them. I watched the game pretty intently. I couldn't remember where Nico was. And that's kind of the similar situation with Jonathan Grenard. He maybe flashed a time or two last week and over the last few weeks where he needs to be a guy. He's supposed to be a guy, Robert, coming off of an 8-sack season last year for a horrible team, a terrible defense. This is going to be a breakout year for him. As a team continues to take this step towards rebuilding and learning how to be competitive, that's a guy that you need. You need Christian Kirksey to step up. You need consistency from your linebacker core. And we have not seen that to this point. Now, you're 4 weeks in. I'm going to give this team another couple of weeks, because you generally don't know what you really have until you're about 5 or 6 weeks into a football season, because injuries happen. You're figuring out rotations. You're figuring out what's the best situation to play guys. let's have a real serious conversation after week 6. And I think we're going to know a lot about this football team going forward, who's going to be a part of it in the future.
You mentioned Nico Collins, 3 catches, 82 yards. He had 5 targets in this game. You look at what he did, and there was the big catch. He was noticeable today because of that huge catch that he made in the fourth quarter. I just don't know what to think of Nico because, I don't know what Davis Mills is actually seeing out there. And when Nico is open, and we know he doesn't even have to be open because he's the type of guy that can make contested catches because of his length and his size and everything else. And we've seen him do that in the preseason. But it seems like once the regular season started up, you see Davis Mills go right back to Brandin Cooks and his blankie from last year. And today, that was good. There were 7 catches on 7 targets for 57 yards. But one of the things that I just don't understand, and you've been out there, is this talked about when you're talking to these guys, or has this been mentioned in a press conference? I've watched 4 straight weeks of Davis Mills missing high, like not 1 yard high, not 2 yards high, but 5 yards high. It over and over and over again. It's the same stuff, same missed high throws every single game. And sometimes it's to the left and sometimes to the right, but it's always high. It seems like that's something that needs to be talked about if you're the Texans at practice. And how do we fix that? And how do we get his throws? How do we get him to come down a little bit with the football? Because those high throws, not only are you missing guys, but you're laying out your wide receiver. You're possibly getting guys hurt if you continue to do that. And it just makes it a lot less likely that you're going to get interceptions because the ball's not going to get tipped because the guy's reaching for it, or it's not going to sail and somebody downfield is going to make a play. I just don't get how we're still 4 weeks in and this is the same issue, the same problem, and he's doing the same thing every single game and nothing changes.
It has been talked about to a degree. Brandin Cooks actually made mention of it this past week ahead of this Chargers game and his availability to us Wednesday or Thursday. I can't remember what day it was, but he said in terms of pass catching, him and Mills do have a ton to work on. Nico was very hush-hush. He doesn't say much, but they don't need to say anything. I can tell you in the 30 minutes on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday that the media has the ability to observe practice in the morning, there's a lot of work being done with Pep, Tyler Johnson, Pharaoh Brown, Dameon Pierce from time to time, and I can't remember who else on a side field while everybody else is in their individual position drills. They're constantly working high ball, low ball, rolling out those sideline throws. I've noticed that quite a bit, and I generally am able to take some pretty good video and tweet that out for you at Shaun Bijani if you want to check it out Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I usually have some of that stuff. It's a thing. It's certainly a thing. And they would probably work that anyway, but if you go back and watch the game today, you'll notice a number of times when Mills had the opportunity to step up in the pocket, Robert, he sailed a lot of those balls. They were overthrows and or behind his receivers. We saw that to O.J. Howard today. We saw that to Nico Collins a couple of times. Brandin Cooks, thankfully, he had his hands with him today because he made some really good catches that a lot of other receivers probably had no business making because the ball wasn't put where it needed to be. He saved Mills's butt a couple of times today, but Mills has hung Cooks out to dry about 3 or 4 times over the last couple of games where he could have just gotten absolutely smashed. Did it to Dameon Pierce on the very first look Pierce had after that 75-yard run, a little swing pass out to the right. Pierce could have gotten crushed, if he catches that ball just a hair later. And those are things that Mills has just absolutely got to work on. And I think that just kind of goes with, not being able to look guys off, telegraphing things, having your mind made up before pre-snap where you're going to go with the football, because if you can do that, chances are the defense is probably looking at it that way as well. I really questioned today a number of times, and I want to see it going forward, especially when I go back and watch the All-22 and just see if Davis Mills is really able to see the whole field. Because if a quarterback is not really able to see the whole field or even given the time to look at the whole field, you have to make some of those pre-snap determinations. All right, well, I've got to go here or here. It's got to be quick. Got to be quick. And sometimes a quarterback can be thinking so much about getting the ball out so quick that he's going to throw the check down 9 times out of 10. And we saw that a lot today in the first half to a tight end or running back. Didn't matter if it was Burkhead or Pierce. That's where the ball was going to go. And that's a problem. That can hinder a Pep Hamilton offense, which, should have a lot of questions as well. But it's going to be a process. And I'm not ready to throw in the towel on Davis Mills yet, because I do see small improvements here and there, just no consistency.
Yeah, I don't know about improvements. I will say that, he gave you a little bit in the fourth quarter. I guess that was the improvement today, but the other quarters were so bad, especially the first half was so bad. But also, I wanted to ask you about the offensive line, because Kenyon Green looked a lot like a rookie today. Penalties, he got burned some. Titus Howard, he's been a little bit rough the last 2 or 3 weeks. I thought he didn't have a really good game against the Broncos. Came back a little bit last week, but this game was not a good one, I think, for Titus Howard. Now, it's a tough assignment that he had. He had one of the best, edge rushers in the game, but, he didn't handle it all that well. And these are the ones that you need that right tackle to really step up for you. What are your thoughts on the offensive line and some of those guys?
I think you're spot on Kenyon Green. He had a couple of really bad sequences today, holding and then the personal foul. I think he had a holding call early in the game as well. And look, those things are going to happen. But I start to really worry about it if it becomes a consistent thing. What I've noticed about Kenyon Green is when he does make mistakes, it's back to work immediately, looking at the video, and he's going to fix that as soon as he possibly can on the practice field the next day. And guys talk about that and really the big thing for him has been pass blocking. And I think for the most part, Kenyon Green, before the numbers today, and I don't know what they are yet, we have to wait until they come out, but, allowed like 1 pressure, from the left guard position. So, I mean, that's huge for a rookie. Never mind a rookie, just anybody at that position. On this offensive line. So I think all in all, what he's done has been very impressive. As a rookie, though, you're going to have moments like this where you're going up against, a different defense every single week. It's hard to kind of consistently make those adjustments in your film study and in your technique. And so let's see if Kenyon Green can make some of those adjustments and carry it over to the following week. Titus Howard still, how many years in the league is he? I think has taken ginormous steps over the course of the last 2 years. He's going to have a bad game from time to time. Unfortunately, like when you've got Davis Mills back there instead of a more mobile quarterback, those mistakes are a little bit more magnified. Whereas these are not things that we're probably talking about an hour after the game or, a Monday after a game, because you have a quarterback that kind of nullify some of those mistakes by offensive alignment.
Yeah, the thing that I will say is there was 4 sacks, I want to say, with Davis Mills, and a couple of them were just coverage sacks or Davis Mills holding on to the ball too long. There was
100%.
One of those late in the game that he just basically walked in. He had a pocket and he panicked again late in the game. I mean, at that point they're down by, they had already lost the game, but it was just one of those where, he just kind of walks into one. There was another one that he just waited on that 3rd and long play early in the game. Mm-hmm. And, just get rid of the ball so you don't lose your field position right there. Just, find somebody to throw at their feet or something like that. And that's another thing that he just doesn't seem to do real well, is know when to get rid of the ball, because there's just nothing there. And he's just waiting and waiting. And, that's somebody that's, in his 2nd year, and he's anxious to make a play and he wants to make something happen. And he just got to figure out, when to live another day. You just got to take the bullet and let's just live another day instead of taking 2 bullets, which is what you do when you take that sack.
100%. Look, I saw the improvement that I saw from Davis Mills today was, still in his pocket presence. I thought he was able to step up in the pocket, showed a willingness to do so. That more today. Hang in the pocket a little bit more, maybe wait for something to open up. As he missed that throw to Nico Collins last week to end the ball game when he checked it down to Rex Burkhead. If he holds on to that ball just a millisecond longer, Collins flashes open on the seam, and who knows what kind of outcome we could have been talking about if he's able to complete that ball last weekend. So I think those kinds of things are in his mind. And like you said, they resonate with the player. And it's okay. Well, let me just move around a little bit more. Let me trust the pocket. Let me trust my blocking, and maybe something will open up. Well, you're going to get burned sometimes as well. Look, he tried to make a play happen earlier in this ball game too. He had ample time to find a receiver. He decided to tuck it and run. That lane quickly was swallowed up. I think that was one where Khalil Mack swallowed him up for a 6-yard sack. It could have been somebody else. I'm not exactly sure. I think that was one that was in the third quarter. But there was that one. He stepped up in the pocket today, took a pretty good lick, airmailed Collins early in this ball game on the Texans' first possession. That was the interception. And I don't mind seeing that in a season like this where you're trying to figure out who a guy is, what he can do. Because what do you have to lose at the end of the day? If you look at it from that point of view, the frustrating part is if you had a quarterback that kind of understood who they are and what they're capable of and knew how to trust, players or pockets or blocks or whatever the thing, maybe just trust their offense flat out. You're that close. And that's what players see on film is the fact that you are that close, or you're this play away, or you're that tackle away, or you're this catch away from making a difference and changing the complexion of a ball game. That's the frustrating thing as a fan. That's the frustrating thing, I think, from a player's point of view. But very upbeat locker room at the end of this one today, Robert. I mean, they're encouraged by the resilience that they showed defensively, offensively, the adjustments that they were able to make at halftime, not, letting that deficit get to them, not letting the fans who booed them twice in the first half get to them, and then once in the second half really get to them. Continue to fight through, and that's a testament to I think the mindset sent down from the top of this coaching staff to the players, and the fact that there's a buy-in. You saw it today.
Let me ask you this about Davis Mills, because we're still talking drop passes. We talked drop passes earlier this year. In this game, in the second half alone, they dropped 3 passes. Philip Dorsett dropped 1. Chris Moore dropped 2. I go help a brother out, but I also go, it's Davis Mills' ball that he throws. Is it hard to catch? Is it, is he putting too much on every single throw? Or should these guys be, they're NFL receivers, so they should be catching the ball, you would think. But that's part of being a really great quarterback, is throwing those balls that are very catchable for wide receivers that make you look better sometimes than you are if you do that often enough.
I think it's a fair question. A lot of the balls, when you see drops, this is why it's kind of difficult to be so damning, I guess, when you talk about the drop balls or what kind of a ball Davis Mills throw. You got to go back and really look at it, because there's some balls today that Mills threw to some receivers, like O.J. Howard, Nico Collins, that were really well contested balls. But then there was a lot, and if it was ever on display, I would say today, where Mills doesn't have that touch. When he's able to step up in the pocket, that ball sails on him quite a bit. And maybe he needs to take a little bit off. Maybe he needs to throw his guys open a little bit more, and trust that. But it's really trusting your offense. It's trusting the routes being run. It's trusting your receivers. And to me, when you hear your best receiver talk about the chemistry not being there, the continuity not being there, just the catchability of the balls from Davis, talking about Brandin Cooks, when that's still an issue after training camp, after preseason, which they did not play, by the way, and I have thoughts on that, and I just think it's ridiculous when you protect guys to that degree and you don't give them reps. But you're 4 weeks in now, and the fact that the chemistry is not there, especially to a guy that you routinely target at least 7 to 10 times every single game, it's concerning. And it's probably not the receiver. It's probably the quarterback. And I think it's a finesse kind of thing. I think it's just a feel that Davis doesn't have yet. And maybe he's a guy that never gets it, Robert. I don't know. Time will certainly tell, but his clock is ticking.
Yeah, with Brandin Cooks, you wanted to protect him in the offseason because he's a rookie. What is he, rookie, second-year player, right, Sean? He's just starting. Right. He's just starting out. You can't, you don't want your young guys to get hurt early. No, okay, he's not that. I just don't get it either. I don't understand it in a lot of these sports where you get no chemistry with anybody. And at the NFL, there's no bigger chemistry. It's no bigger chemistry league than the NFL on a team. Where a guy's going to be, where he's going to be set up, everything from the offensive line, which the Texans routinely have no chemistry, to the quarterback, wide receiver, to where the running back is, all of that stuff. I mean, Dameon Pierce is another example. Like, maybe you would have been a little bit more confident in the guy if you ran him more than half a preseason game. And I always hear, well, it's the same. We're doing it in practice or whatever. It is not the same in practice. It's not the same as being on an NFL field in front of fans, going against a team that doesn't know your plays necessarily. It's a different thing. And that's a way that you can be better to start a season. And maybe they get it together, second part of the season. Maybe they do. And then you go, well, why weren't you together for the first part? And they're going to go, well, it's a bunch of rookies. But it's rookies that you didn't play. It's veterans that you didn't play, whether it's Cooks or Laramie Tunsil or most of the offensive line that, of course, is having some issues early in the season, or did, especially we saw in the first couple of games with chemistry. And that's the real frustrating thing here is, look, we're not coming off of playoffs and Super Bowls. This is a team that's got to learn all this stuff, and chemistry starts with that. And again, they are treating this entire thing like we're going to the Super Bowl this year. That was the plan from the beginning. And the Texans have got to look at it instead this whole season as we got to get chemistry together. We have to figure things out. We got to play guys. We got to let them make mistakes, whether it's Dameon Pierce or whoever. You just have to live with it. But if you think they're talented, which you do, obviously, then you have to live with mistakes, but you have to let them, get a little bit of chemistry going.
This just seems like a very systematic, progressive formula that the Texans have with the way that they are utilizing their players. How slowly they brought Kenyon Green along in the preseason, missing so much time after a concussion, after a knee, working him in as a starter after the first game and a half. And look, he's had the reins now for the last 2-3 weeks at the left guard. Look at Dameon Pierce's touches. They've gone from 9, 11 to 20 to now 13 today. The yardage production is certainly there. But my God, he touched the ball 20 times on the ground last week and only 13 times today, caught 6 passes for 8 yards out of the backfield for the Texans. And I guess they're looking at total touches. They're bringing him along very, very slowly. I guess they don't want to risk, serious injury with him, and possibly lose him for a year that is really going to matter, which is next year maybe. I don't know. But what about this year mattering? If Dameon Pierce is on the field when he's supposed to be on the field as your lead back, as your starting running back, as your second best offensive player, what are you doing when you've had this many opportunities to be in ball games? Not even just be in ball games, go win ball games. Go win ball games. You had that opportunity, and you put yourself into that situation today after trailing by 21 points with 8.5 minutes left. You cut it within 3, and your defense gives you a stop, and you crap the bed again. And to me, there's something very egregious here, and I don't think that they're stupid. I just don't think that we agree with their philosophy. Okay, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this thing continues to play out this season with their utilization of Dameon Pierce, Kenyon Green, Jalen Petrie, Derek Stingley, who, if Stingley doesn't get hurt in today's game, I do believe that Petrie and Stingley have played 100% of the snaps 3 straight weeks from the day that Lovie Smith said 100% of the snaps. Well, that can't happen. Oh, we're definitely going to have to rotate some guys, and we'll rotate some guys next week. He said that after week 1. They played 100% of the snaps. Stingley's been the guy to screw it up, and he missed like 4 snaps 2 weeks ago, and however many snaps he missed today, bam, went right back out there after a trip to the med tent. I don't know, man. Who you're choosing to protect guys that I don't really understand the whole decision process. I just don't agree with it. Like, it's one hell of a buy-in, Robert, when you're that close. And if I'm Dameon Pierce, if I'm Brandin Cooks, if I'm a lot of these players, Laramie Tunsil, I'm raising absolute hell and I'm beating down somebody's door like, hey, what the heck are we doing here? Like, what's the thought here? I mean, we're this close. I mean, I know we're not supposed to be, and forget about who you're playing, forget about where they rank defensively, offensively, who the hell their quarterback is. You're still this close to being 3-1 after today's ball game. 3-1. That's really what they should be in my mind.
Yeah, just I'm going to go to a couple of comments. Chris says, I don't understand 4th and 1 and Dameon Pierce not being on the field. We talked about it. We agree with you. Tony says, did Mills look good enough in the second half to give you hope? No, because there were times where, you know, he made the bad throw, like the O.J. Howard throw, and there are just too many times where he looks like he's not even close. It's not like he's missing by a little bit. He's missing by a lot, and it doesn't seem to change. And if he can't correct it and the coaching staff can't correct it at this point, 4 weeks into the season, when he's making the same exact throwing mistakes, he's throwing it 5 feet over receivers. No, I don't have hope for Davis Mills, and he has regressed this year. And I don't know how I'm supposed to have hope for a second-year guy that looks worse with, I think, is better offensive line play and a better running back. And, you know, there's not a whole lot of wide receiver, and I will grant you that. But I think the tight ends overall have played better this year. You know, we've had some flashes from Jordan Akins or O.J. Howard, or, you know, we've had some flashes. But, I mean, what do you think? Anything giving you hope with Davis Mills at all?
I mean, hope for him becoming a franchise quarterback? No. I mean, I don't know. No. Like, somebody, I think it was Jonathan Alexander, DJ Bieniemy, maybe it was Brooks Cabina on Friday. We have a little sit down with Lovie Smith, and he asked him a pretty poignant question about, do you think Davis Mills can become a franchise quarterback? And of course, Lovey was like, well, what's a franchise quarterback? Da, da, da. He knew what we were talking about. And he was like, yeah, I get it. But all those franchise quarterbacks, name one. Somebody was like, oh, well, you know, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, you know, Kyler Murray, Trevor Lawrence, you know, stop. What did those guys look like, you know, after 14 games or 16 games? You know, did you think they were going to be franchise quarterbacks? And that's kind of how the conversation went. But in my mind, I'm saying, yeah, but coach, like where they were drafted, that's why they were drafted, to be a franchise quarterback. And they were, you know, like your Patrick Mahomes, you know, had a little bit of time to sit back and look and observe. And, you know, we talk about that. You want to go back in the day to Aaron Rodgers getting tutelage behind Brett Favre. You know, look, quarterbacks have been put into different situations. Some you throw them in the fire and they perform right out of the gate. And you're like, bam. Some you set them for a little bit. They figure it out and give an opportunity. You know, they seize the day. Somebody's going to get Wally pipped. You know, Davis Mills being a third-round draft pick out of Stanford, 14 games right now, does not look at all like he should be and is going to be a franchise quarterback. No. But does he look like a guy that gives me hope to have the Texans in position to win some games that they're probably not supposed to this year, which is basically every game on their schedule, because nobody gives this team a chance to beat anybody? Okay. So is he a guy that's going to give him a chance to win? Yes. Because he said it himself 2 weeks ago. We're not a team that can overcome mistakes. Well, this is not a team that can overcome serious mistakes by their quarterback yet. But I think the defense showed today that they have the big play capability to do just that, overcome poor quarterback play. Dameon Pierce can overcome poor quarterback play. Can Dameon Pierce and his Texans football team overcome poor personnel decisions? Because he's a guy that is unfortunately not on the field to help you overcome any kind of poor play when he's off the field in the game's biggest moments.
I'm going to end with a thought that I had, because I was talking to RG Seal, who was my original co-host of this show for 6 years, helped me get this thing started. And he said, why are you so upset? You weren't expecting anything from the Texans this year, were you? And I said, well, here's why I'm upset. I'm upset because the Texans are coaching this like they expect something instead of, hey, let's go all in. Let's be aggressive. Let's blitz. Let's play our young running back who's got all the potential in the world, even if he might screw up sometimes, because we know down the road it's going to pay off. And he's got the real talent on this team to turn the corner with us and make us a better team. And, Pep Hamilton has looked like garbage. And it's not that I'm upset with players necessarily. I'm upset with the way they're coaching this team. And that's why I get frustrated, is because the Texans play like with this kind of losing mentality and losing philosophy in the way that they're doing this. Like, why are you using this Blanky and Rex Burkhead all the time? Why are you not throwing the ball down the field a little bit more? What about doing that? Why aren't you blitzing a little bit more? And, they tried a couple times this week, but it was funny that they tried to blitz a good quarterback when they had 3 weeks to blitz bad quarterbacks when they were in trouble, and they never did it. And then they blitzed the good one a couple times today, and they got beat by it. It's that sort of stuff. It's like, let's be aggressive. Let's go all out. And I'm fine if you blitz Justin Herbert, if you blitz him today, but you're blitzing everybody else, then I got no issue with blitzing Herbert. But you can't just go, okay, we're going to blitz the good quarterback that probably knows how to deal with it a little bit more, and then not blitz somebody like Fields last week, or Matt Ryan, who's dead man walking and with the Colts. I mean, he's old, 36, and he's not very good anymore. And there was just so many missed opportunities in the last few weeks to be aggressive and to say, we're going to try to play winning football, and this is how it's going to be done. And instead, they're like scared. They're coaching scared. They've got the players playing scared. I think that's part of the issue, is the players kind of play scared out there, and you could feel it. And that's why I'm upset. And I'm sick of it, because I've been watching the same stupid mistakes for years, the same poor-looking offense. It doesn't matter who the offensive coordinator. I think Tim Kelly has been the closest to showing me that he's a good offensive coordinator in the last few years. But it's been a lot of the same stuff now for 6 years. Since the Bill O'Brien era started, we've seen a lot of the same stuff. I mean, there were some things that are similar previous to that, but it's just a lot of the same stuff of playing not to lose, not looking prepared. Every week, the Texans, it seems like, whether it's Bill O'Brien or this era, they come out and it's a 3-and-out or an interception or something terrible to start a game. And it's exhausting and tiring to go, like, your hopes are dashed almost as soon as you walk into NRG Stadium or as soon as you turn on your TV set on a Sunday.
Shoot your shot. That's what we're not seeing the Texans do. The last 4 games tell you that much. What are we talking about? Missed opportunities. Why isn't this guy on the field at this particular time? Why haven't they done this when they've clearly shown that they can take shots down the field? And they do have a guy that can go get a football. You're talking about blitzing. Shoot your shot. Like, if you get beat on a blitz, if you got a quarterback that's able to just beat the blitz, get the ball out quick, fire it into somebody in space, fine, I get it. But shoot your shot. Put the pressure on them to make a play. Make them beat you. And Lovie Smith said it a couple of weeks ago. It's talking about winning. We got to try to figure out how not to lose. He said something to that effect. And I feel like the coaching staff in general, has to take a lot of the blame, because they need to figure out how to stop coaching not to win and coach to win a football game. There are people out there, and one of them is a good friend of mine, Jeremy Branham, who I know has this opinion. I heard him say it as much a couple of weeks ago on his radio program, that you don't need to win football games to create a winning culture. I mean, go figure that. I guess. I mean, because at the end of the day, it's about the talent. And whenever your team is constructed and you're ready to win, the talent will win out and they will win you football games. However, I don't understand having a group of 53 guys active on an NFL roster every single Sunday, them all believing that they have an opportunity to go win a football game today in their career. But we're not really supposed to from an organizational standpoint because we have loftier goals. So I don't think these guys are playing scared. I think they want to win. I think they do play hungry. I just think you don't have guys that you're used to seeing play hungry that would play that way on any other NFL team. You got a lot of Jags on this team, just another guy with a few bright spots here and there on both sides of the ball. But at the end of the day, Robert, you probably have less than 10 guys easy that would go start for other NFL teams playing for your Texans right now. And the fact that they've been that close with this roster, with this group, that's disappointing. That's frustrating.
So that's our final thoughts. Just want to remind everybody before we close off the live feed, and tell your friends about us, by the way. Let them know what's going on. We're going to try to do Texans live shows. If it's a home game, Sean's got to handle the locker room stuff, so it'll be a couple hours, probably about 5 o'clock like it was on this one. Otherwise, we're going to try to do it as soon as the game ends and go live. But we'll let you know on Twitter. We'll let you know on social media what's going on with everything. I just want to remind everybody also that me and Sean, we're doing a midweek show as well. So go check that out. Sean's out there every day. He's out there all the time at NRG Stadium. He's at the press conferences. He's in the locker room. He'll have some great information for you. It's at Shaun Bijani. It's at HST Podcast. If you want to hit up me on Twitter, we want to hear from you guys. Again, make sure to subscribe, but also to comment on YouTube and tell us what you think. I look at every single comment. I promise you. I looked at the comments during the show in our chat here in the thread. So really want to thank everybody for joining us, and thank Sean as well. Another tough one for the Texans, 34-24, the final. Until next time, we'll talk to you later.